Hi, this is Julie Campbell, and today I'm sharing a tutorial on how to create a vintage book tablet case. I posted some photos of a case that I had made a few weeks ago, and I had a lot of requests for a tutorial, so here we go. To begin with, you are going to, of course, need a vintage book. So just select one that has a nice sturdy cover, and make sure that the spine of the book is intact. You'll also want to make sure that the book, of course, is large enough to hold your tablet. In my case, I have an iPad mini, and this book just is big enough to fit my case. And just for measurement's sake, it looks like my book is about 5 3/4 inches by 8 1/2 inches. Of course, this case can also just hold notebooks or other personal items, so it can be used for a variety of purposes. You'll also want to select a couple of different pieces of fabric. I have the floral fabric for the outside of my tablet case and the green canvas for the inside. So now I'm just placing my book over my floral fabric, and I'm wanting to cut the fabric a couple of inches wider than my actual book. So I'm just making a little snip there and making a straight tear. And then I'll place my book back on top of the fabric, and I'll make another little snip and then tear to cut the top. Once you have this piece cut, cut a second piece the same width and height to fit the back of your tablet case. My fabric was a little thin, and I decided to back it with just some plain white fabric. You definitely don't have to do this, but I didn't like seeing the front of my book through my fabric, so I just went ahead and did this extra step. You'll also need to have some heat and bond, which in my mind is basically double-sided tape that works with fabric. So you'll want to cut two pieces of the heat and bond that are roughly the same size of the piece of fabric that you've cut for the front and back of your tablet case. Just follow the manufacturer's instructions, which involves a little bit of ironing, so you're going to actually iron the heat and bond onto your fabric. So once you have that ironed on, there's a protective backing, and you just remove that, and that's going to reveal the adhesive. So you'll place that adhesive side down directly on top of your book. And then you can just take your iron and once again follow manufacturer's instructions to heat and to adhere that fabric piece directly onto your book. So once you have the front of your book adhered, go ahead and do the exact same thing for the back of your book. So now we need to work on the inside, and I kind of think of it as wrapping a package. I just start with the corners and I iron those in place, and then I just kind of work my way around and fold in the flaps that are remaining. So this is what your book cover will look like once your fabric has been adhered. But say you have a book that you like the cover and you don't want to cover it with fabric, that's perfectly fine too. So I'll show you an example by making a case with this book. So I'm just taking a craft knife and I'm cutting through the pages here so that I'm removing all of the inside of my book, and I just want to have the hard outside case of my book remaining. So these books are really nice. Some books, the pages are actually glued to the spine and you have to cut each individual page. But as you can see here, I just have to make a couple of cuts with this book and all of the pages are removed. You might want to look for a book like that when you're searching for your own. So now I'm just taking a long zipper and I'm just double checking that this zipper is large enough to fit around my case with a couple of extra inches left over. These are some canvas strips that I've cut. You can use any sort of fabric. Basically, we're going to expand the width and the length of the zipper. For these long strips, basically, you need about a couple of inches. I have probably a little excess, but 2 inches wide would be fine, and make sure that the strips are a little bit longer than your zipper. And I also cut some smaller little strips here, and these are going to go onto the end of the zipper. These are also, I would say, 2 inches, maybe by 4 inches. So I'm going to sew these in place. So I'm just taking my zipper, turning it over so that the right sides of my fabric are together. Basically, the front side of the zipper, the front side of my fabric. In this case, the fabric doesn't really have a front and a back, but I am just pinning where I know I want to make some stitches, and then I'm just making a straight stitch along right where that pin is. So this is what it will look like once you've made that straight stitch. So I'll show you here. This is what it looked like. And then I just use my iron to flip it over and then iron it flat so it lays nice and straight. So you'll want to do that for both ends of your zipper. So now we're going to need to sew on those long strips. So I am just placing my fabric and imagine it front sides together, and you want the bottom of your fabric strip to meet the bottom of the zipper. So you kind of have that lined up there, and I'm just placing some pins before I make my machine stitch. So this is what it will look like. I just made a straight stitch right there along the bottom, and once again use my iron I flipped it and then ironed it flat so it has a really nice smooth seam. So now we need to do the same thing, but we're going to do the top of the fabric to the top of the zipper. So I'll just pin those in place once again. And then once that's pinned, I'll take it back to my sewing machine, make a straight stitch, iron it back over. I've got a little bit of excess fabric here, so I'm just trimming that off. So now you have to place the zipper inside of your book. And I use book clips to kind of hold everything in place so that I can put my zipper in, unzip it, and position it where I want it. You can keep moving it around using your book clips until you get your zipper all the way around the inside of your book. And once you have everything in place and you know that your book will open, it will actually open flat, then you can use some glue. I'm using the E6000, which is an extremely strong glue. You don't need a whole lot. And I'm just taking it little by little, placing some glue, making sure that my fabric is nice and smoothed down over the spine, or actually the book cover. And then once I have it in place, I'm replacing that binding clip, so that's going to hold it in place while it dries. So just do that all the way around both sides of your book where the zipper meets the hardback book case. So this is a little bit of a tedious process, but once you're finished, this is what it should look like once it's dry. I'm using a little scrap of fabric here because I want to cover up the inside spine. We're going to try to make the inside of this bookcase pretty. So just kind of taking that, gluing that down in place, and now the inside looks nice and smooth. And now I've cut a couple of pieces of pattern paper that coordinate, as well as some scrap pieces of, it's basically a really thin cardboard. And I'm just using that cardboard to give my paper a little bit more stability. So I'm just taking some adhesive and gluing both pieces of pattern paper onto one of those pieces of chipboard. So now I'm wanting to make a pocket for my book. I've got a little scrap of fabric here, and I'm just putting it in place where I'd like to have a pocket. I'm using this little notepad just to make sure that I don't make my pocket too tight, because if you sewed it straight, then it would be hard to get things back into your pocket unless you have a stretchy fabric. So I'm just using binder clips to hold that in place, and then I sewed my pocket. You can also use glue, but I went ahead and did the sewing machine so that it would be a little bit faster for me. So at this point, we just need to adhere these panels inside of the book. So I'm using some more of that E6000. And each of these panels, I would say, is about a 1/2 inch smaller width and height from the measurement of the outside of the book. So here's the other side, just use some glue there. And as you can see, you don't have to go crazy with the glue. A little bit does hold very strongly. So I'm just tucking those in and allowing each of those panels to dry. So once dry, this is what your case will look like. And now you're ready to try it out. You can place your tablet in there, have your little notepad. It's just such a cute little way of carrying your tablet. So thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope that you enjoy making your own tablet case. For more information, you can always visit my blog. It's www.stampedinhisimage.blogspot.com.